When it comes to USC football, it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
You are Locked On USC, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC part of the Locked On Network your first listen every day. It doesn't matter if you're watching the show on YouTube. It doesn't matter where you download this podcast. It's always going to be free, and I am always going to appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. How do you want to see Lincoln Riley call plays when USC starts the season? On yesterday's episode of Locked On USC, I brought up J.D. Pickell's top 10 returning quarterback list. And I was pointing out how Jaden Maiava wasn't on the list. There were other high-profile names who missed the cut also that I brought up. And it was curious to me how, again, USC, regardless if it's Lincoln Riley, USC plus Lincoln Riley doesn't have one of the top quarterbacks in the country. Well, I was a day early. I was using one person's opinion. The next day, On3 released their top 25 impact quarterbacks in 2025. Typically, the word impact, you put in quotes. It's always going to reflect, having a positive impact. Conversely, though, especially at the quarterback position, if things don't go well, things go south, there's still an impact, right? And when you don't have a quarterback, it will affect how well your team performs that season. It's kind of like, duh, big red truck, there goes a fire engine, but sometimes you have to state the obvious. So again, On3 put together a list of their impact top 25 quarterbacks, and it was basically highlighting the best of the best. And their ranking, according to them, takes into account a blend of proven production as well as potential based on a skill set. So, number one top impact quarterback, Sam Leavitt, Arizona State. They pointed out that he threw for 2,885 yards, 24 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions, while also running for 443 yards and 5 touchdowns. Number two, Drew Allar, Penn State's quarterback. He threw for 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 8 picks. He also ran for 302 yards and another 6 touchdowns. Let's see. Number three, DJ Lagway, Florida's quarterback. He was a freshman last year. They said if Lagway can continue to develop more touch on his short and mid-range game, he will be absolutely lethal. He's also he's a more capable runner than what he showed in 2024. And part of that was because he was nursing a sore hamstring. Number four, Arch Manning, Texas. Yep. He didn't make J.D. Pickell's top 10, but he's number 4 in the On3 Network's top 25 impact quarterbacks. Threw for, as a freshman last year, he got spot time playing, backing up Quinn Ewers and also playing when he got hurt. He threw for 939 yards, 9 touchdowns, and he only threw 2 interceptions. He knows how to protect the ball. But he also ran for 4 touchdowns. We know that Quinn Ewers is moving on. Arch Manning is Texas's starting quarterback in 2025. Number 5, Lonorris Sellers, South Carolina. Threw for 2,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, but he also ran for 674 yards, 7 touchdowns. All right, those are your top 5. Did anybody notice a theme yet with those top 5 quarterbacks? What do they all have in common? Hint. They ran the ball. Number 6, Garrett Nussmeier. I love this description. They don't have a metric for toughness, but if they did, the LSU quarterback would be near the top. He was pounded at times in 2024, but more often than not, stepped up and delivered anyway. Cutting down on turnovers in 2025, as Nussmeier finished with 12 interceptions in 2024, he went through a really tough stretch in the middle of the season, throwing 9 interceptions in 5 games. Still, the numbers are elite: 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns. You know what? Insert Miller Moss's name. What's the difference? I mean, obviously, Garrett got to finish the season as a starting quarterback. He wasn't replaced. But when you listen to that description, it's kind of like, sounds like Miller Moss, sounds like USC. Anyways, number 7, Carson Beck. He's going from Georgia to Miami. We'll see how Mario Cristobal's impact decides Beck's impact on the Hurricanes. Rounding out the top 10, you had Cade Klubnik, Clemson, John Mateer, Oklahoma. Number 10, Nico Iamaleava, Tennessee. And it's interesting. They said Nico can be one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country. He's now out to build on a season in which he threw for 2,600 yards and 19 touchdowns, but ran for 358 yards and 3 more touchdowns. So there's the on-3 top 10. Let me finish the list. Number 11, Josh Hoover, Texas Christian. Number 12, Talon Green, Arkansas. Number 13, Eli Holstein, Pittsburgh. Number 14, Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt. 15, CJ Bailey, North Carolina State. 16, Darian Mensah, Duke. You got Baron Morton at Texas Tech. Yeah, first time I've mentioned that name in my lifetime. Number 18, you got Sawyer Robertson, Baylor. 19, Rocco Beck, Iowa State. Number 20, Avery Johnson, Kansas State. 21, Luke Altmaier, Illinois. Oh, guess you might find this name familiar. Jaden Maiava checks in at number 22 as the top impact quarterback returning in 2025. Number 23, Dylan Raiola, Nebraska. You might recognize this name. Number 24, Miller Moss, Louisville. Number 25, has not thrown a pass this year since he's been in college, to my knowledge. I don't remember seeing him in a game. Julian Sayin, Ohio State. So not in the top 10, not in the top 20. And again, this is a very subjective opinion poll put out by one network. Still, unless Lincoln Riley starts installing more RPO type of concepts and Jaden actually starts running the ball like the other top 10 impact quarterbacks, specifically those top 5 that I mentioned, look, Jaden's going to be forced to rely on his accuracy. And if we're being fair, he was inconsistent with his accuracy last year. His decision-making also needs to take a big jump in the positive direction. This is where Lincoln Riley's play calling is going to come into play. How Coach Riley starts calling plays in the beginning of the season is going to determine how Maiava finishes the season. And not just Maiava, the team. But I think it's fair to say he will be the starting quarterback going into spring camp. And if I was a betting man, I would say coming out of spring camp as well. We'll see. Excuse me. So again, with Coach Riley, design more quarterback runs. Design more passes to the tight ends, to the running backs coming out of the backfield. That will help with Jaden's accuracy, especially as the season goes along. I've been getting a bunch of feedback from yesterday's episode of Locked on USC. Some of the feedback was, you know what, Mark, you're a little bit too critical. Jaden was still learning the playbook last year. That came across as an excuse to me. He's still too young. Again, if you're looking at his age compared to Will Howard, who was 25 years old? Sure, he's still young. But if you're looking at college experience, starting experience, body of work, no, can't have it like that. You can't have 18 games of starting experience and say he's young. Now, I will concede both points. He was learning the playbook, and chronologically, he's still a young player, age-wise. And again, coming out of spring camp 2024, again, I will concede, Jaden was behind Miller Moss when it comes to playbook knowledge. He should have been. He was also behind the 8 ball when it came to, building those relationships, the chemistry with his teammates, specifically, his pass catchers. No one's going to deny that. No one should deny that. However, as the season went on and more practice reps were taken, did Jaden improve in these 3 key areas? This is really what we should be judging USC starting quarterback on. Good decision making, reacting in the moment. Whatever the game plan was going in, it changes the second that ball is snapped. Throwing with accuracy. Did he get better as the season went along when he was in the game? And when I mean accuracy, I'm talking about throwing it to his own guys. I'm sorry, I had to get that dig in there. He had too many pick sixes, right? But he also had some really beautiful throws. He throws a really nice deep ball. It's effortless. But that mid-range game matters as well. That's where he struggles. So can he progress? The third area is, can he process the game? Does Jaden read defense as well? Is he seeing things that aren't there? Coach Riley has to start the season making Jaden a willing runner. It didn't happen with Miller. I mean, you saw Miller, score the touchdown against LSU. He was willing to run in, short yardage situations. I don't know if that was ever part of the game plan. Never felt like, hey, this would be a perfect opportunity for Miller to keep the ball, take off and run. There were a lot of those opportunities. It just didn't seem like it was cold. And it really never developed with Jaden, despite his athletic ability. If Maiava's going to move up that list, Coach Riley's play calling will have to change. That will have an impact more than anything else with Jaden's performance on the field. Change the play calling. All right, we're going to continue the theme of it's not how you start, it's how you finish. Next segment coming up now. Attending NFL playoff games is an experience like no other. I've only done one, but it was a lot of fun. The energy, the excitement, the connection with the other fans, it's pretty cool. Have you ever seen your team live in a playoff game? This year, Game Time makes it even easier to create those unforgettable moments with their new feature called Game Time Picks. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff. It's only going to show you the best deals on great seats so you can focus on what matters, getting there to the game. The all-in pricing is a total game changer. There's no surprise fees at checkout, and you're going to get the Game Time guarantee. If you find a ticket in the same section and row for less, Game Time credits you 110% of that difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms will apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege, and you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. For the second year in a row, USC finished the year unranked. Yeah. This is actually this will be the first time since USC did not finish ranked in 2018 or 2019. And before that, you got to go back to 1999 and 2000, the Hackett years. So let's review. Paul Hackett, Clay Helton, Lincoln Riley. I don't think anybody, I know I didn't have that trio on my bingo card when comparing resumes. I am not a fan of Premier League soccer. Don't watch it, don't follow it. I know some of the names, but Other than that, I don't care. But if I was a fan, and I was a fan of the relegation part of Premier League soccer, I've been told that USC would be eligible for relegation. What does that mean? How does relegation work in the Premier League, in soccer? Essentially, it's this. The Premier League is the top tier of England's football pyramid. They've got 20 teams battling it out for the honor of being crowned the champions. The teams who finish in the bottom three of the league at the end of the campaign are relegated to the Championship League, the second tier of football, English football. So in this case, if we were making an apples to oranges, I guess, comparison, USC would move down from the group of four level and have to work their way back up from the FCS, or they would have to work their way back into the FBS and get away from that group of however many, the Mountain West, the Boise's, that type of program. In 2024, last year, USC began the season. They were in the top 25. They were ranked number 23. They went down to Vegas, beat up LSU in that fist fight, jumped all the way up to number 13 in the country. Came home, beat up Utah State, went out to Michigan, and they were number 11. They lost their first close game of the year. And I guess the voters showed some mercy because they only dropped USC down to number 13. Tough way to lose on the road against at that time, the reigning national champions. The last time that USC was ranked in 2024 was after they beat Wisconsin at home. They were number 11. Then they went on the road to Minnesota. After that loss, that was it. They were done. They were finished for the season. Never got back into the top 25. And what's interesting is when you go back and you reflect on the season, USC finished the year, not how it started, it's how you finish. They finished the year playing just two teams that finished in the top 25. Ironically, both of those teams finished in the top 5. You had Penn State, number 2, Penn State, number 5. Excuse me, Notre Dame, number 2, Penn State, number 5. I want to make sure I'm clear on that. The Big Ten Conference itself finished with 3 top 5 teams. Obviously, Ohio State, number 1. Oregon was number 3. Penn State, number 5. Indiana was number 10. Illinois was number 16. And this coming season, USC travels to Oregon as well as to Illinois. Pardon me. I think we have to kind of admit that the Associated Press, the AP poll, doesn't carry the same cachet that it once did. The coaches poll doesn't even matter anymore. It's non-existent. The AP poll still gives you a national outlook, a view on your team, though. You've got 62 voters spread across all over the country, regionally. But none of them had USC in the mix or in their conversation at the end of last year. So again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. So again, USC finished the year last year. They were 3-1 in their final 4 games, which included that comeback win against Texas A&M in their bowl game. But the Trojans finishing 7-6, that's not going to get you into the others receiving votes category, let alone put you in the top 25. Here's how the final top 25 ended for the 2024 season. Notre Dame, number 1. Notre Dame, number 2. Those are your 2 finalists, obviously. Oregon, number 3. Do teams that get blown out deserve to finish ahead of a semifinalist like Texas or Penn State? Just asking the question. So, number 4, Texas. Number 5, Penn State. Number 6, Georgia. Number 7, Arizona State. 8, Boise. 9, Tennessee. Indiana was number 10. Ole Miss, 11, finished ahead of number 12, SMU, who made the playoffs. Number 13, BYU. Clemson at 14. Iowa State 15. The Illinois Fighting Illini was 16. 17, Alabama. 18, Miami. 19, South Carolina. Number 20, Syracuse. 21, Army. 22, Missouri. 23, UNLV. 24, Memphis. Excuse me. Number 25, Colorado. In the others receiving votes category, you got Navy, LSU, Louisville, Michigan, Kansas State, Marshall, Ohio State, Florida, TCU, and Texas A&M with 1. I guess you can lose your final game of the season, go 8-4, and be considered one of the teams that you might want to look at. Whatever. Now that there's a 12-team playoff, do you even care about the AP poll anymore? It's part of, if you're a traditionalist like I am, it's hard to kind of push it aside. You want to give it some sort of relevancy. But if it is going to stick around in the playoff format, I think the AP poll, it would be prudent for them to wait until week number 5 before you release your first poll. Because a few weeks later, the College Football Playoff Committee releases their poll. Let's see what kind of impact the AP poll actually has with the college football playoff selectors, the guys, the people who are sitting in a room trying to pick the 12 best teams to compete in the playoffs. You get these way too early polls, and then the AP poll comes out with their preseason poll a week or two before the season kicks off. And it just sets certain, I'm using finger quotes, expectation levels. And then all of a sudden, well, if you're in the AP poll, that means you should be in the College Football Playoff Committee's brain trust. They should be looking at you as well. Okay, I'll agree. Don't release any preseason polls. Release that first AP poll after 4 games have been played. Let's see now where everybody slots everybody. Because I don't see a whole lot of overcorrectness. I don't see people going back and correcting their previous selections. And that's why the coaches poll was such a bag of crap. Number one, coaches don't watch other games; they're too focused on their own team. So it was always a sports information director, somebody just submitting a vote. It just didn't seem. Anyways, so USC. I don't know if they're going to start in the preseason poll when the AP releases it in August. At this point, do you care? Does it really reflect on what kind of team USC is until you see them play? That's when a poll should be released. Let's wait till there's 4 games played, then throw it out there. And then a couple weeks later, you get the first playoff poll. You can now match them up that way. One more segment to go. It's time for the Friday rant. Nick Saban's correct. During the college national championship, the football playoff, he was talking about NIL, and he said this: all I'm saying, the people out there need to know the model is unsustainable. It's not good for the players. Again, we're talking about NIL. Players need to get compensated, no doubt. But it has to be done in a way where, in some kind of way where you have competitive balance, and that every school has the same thing. One school can't spend $30 million for players while another school is spending $3 million. With that, Coach Saban said, I guess we might have to leave it up to the lawmakers in Washington, D.C. Although, they're having a busy day at the moment. He's talking about politics, whatever. I mean, people in Congress, I don't care, but somebody has to get off their butt and do something. So Coach Saban's saying, look, if the NCAA is not going to fix it, maybe you got to get the people up in D.C. to figure this out. Nick Saban's not wrong. You can't. NIL has to have some rules, some regulations, some guardrails put in place. But he's also a hypocrite. Let's just be honest about it. So it doesn't mean he's wrong. It can mean, two things can be right at the same time. He can be a hypocrite, but he can also be absolutely correct. You can't have the Oregons and the Ohio States and the Miamis in the world out there just throwing money at the problems. We know that doesn't fix things if we're looking at the real world. Anyways, the reason why Nick Saban's a hypocrite, and he's probably not the right spokesperson for this, is everybody knows before NIL went above table, where you can pay players, Alabama was one of the worst at breaking the rules. They were called Dodge Charger U for a reason. And I think Nick Saban had an owning interest in a Dodge dealership. You go look at the Alabama, parking lot, the football players. For every 5 cars, 4 was a Dodge Charger. And so, again, it's not like Alabama wasn't using, they weren't inducing players with incentives. Were they throwing around millions of dollars? Yes, under the table. A lot of teams are doing that under the table. But not to the extent that it's being done today, because you can do it legally and there's no rules in place. Nobody can say, no, you can't do that. Who's to say that you can't give, a defensive lineman coming out of high school $2 million a year? Who's to say that a quarterback who has 4 years of college experience under his belt isn't worth $5 million for the next season? What if that person is the missing link to getting that team into the national championship game? Some teams found out it's better to give that money to the players on your roster, retain them, develop them, keep them around, pay them. Others say, well, you know what? Let's just buy everybody, bring them in, and roll it out there and see what we can do. So again, I think Nick Saban is correct. The way it's working right now, it's unsustainable. USC's trying to play that game, but 1 year it's $30 million. The next year it's going to be $35, $40 million. It has to stop at some point. And now you got revenue sharing coming into play. You got to fix this. Coach Saban's right, but he's also a hypocrite. He shouldn't be the one talking about it, because it's kind of what, when you're talking about the SEC kind of spawned this. Other programs said, you know what, if we're going to compete with the SEC, we got to be able to do this too. And look what happened. Ever since NIL came to fruition, and it kind of leveled the playing field. There's more, I'm using finger quotes, parity across college football. But it's not really parity. It's just other programs saying, hey, I got the money, we're going to spend it. Or our boosters are going to spend it. I think one of the ways you combat this, how other programs can make themselves even competitive against those programs that have unlimited NIL resources. Starting this year, you can, the scholarship limitations jump from 85. You can have 105 scholarship players on your football roster if you want. You also have revenue sharing. I don't think you need 85, let alone 105. If you want to get more players on your roster, if you want to pay the players on your roster more money, divide it up less. You don't need 85 roster players. You only travel 70 for road games. See where I'm going with this? Addition by subtraction. Get the 70 best players, put them on scholarship, give them a bigger piece of the pie. I think you'll be okay. All right, that's it for this episode of Locked on USC. I'll be back again. By the way, do not forget USC hoops this weekend. The women take on UCLA. The men host the Bruins on Monday at Galen. Beat the Bruins. Everybody, the women's game is already sold out. that men's game better be sold out. And it better be overwhelming Cardinal and gold. Coach Musselman's already noticed they're winning on the road in tough road environments where those teams have home court advantages. Do your team a favor, give them a home court advantage. Okay, now the rant is over. Everyone have a great weekend. Till that next episode of Locked On USC, everyone, you know what to do.